Good evening, everyone. Hi, SCA. Welcome. We are super happy to be together tonight to celebrate the work of artist Barbara Kruger, the focus of our exhibition, Thinking of You. I mean me, I mean you. This exhibition is Barbara's largest in 20 years. And in just these few weeks, we've been incredibly fortunate to welcome over 20,000 visitors to Barbara's exhibition. So while the show is a retrospective by technical definition, it refuses a static chronology in favor of a critical and dynamic reappraisal of accomplishments over Barbara's career. More than half the exhibition is new, with iconic pieces being updated, reimagined in the present tense, and also site-specific work commissioned specifically for our museum. Collaboratively designed with the artist, the exhibition goes far beyond the traditional and primary exhibition space that we call Regenstein Hall, and extends to the windows of our historic Michigan Avenue building and the modern wing facade, amongst other sites on our campus. And you'll see text installations and projections in various places around Chicago, from Lake Street to the Merchandise Mart. It's truly a campus-wide and city-wide presentation. So I'm grateful, as always, for the ongoing dedication, vision, and commitment of our Society for Contemporary Art and all of its leadership and all of its members. I'd like to especially acknowledge the SCA for its major support of this exhibition through the SCA Activation Fund. As evidenced with the unprecedented scale and scope of Thinking of You, I mean me, I mean you, the SCA's generosity continues to enable us to amplify artists' voices and share their important work with our audiences in Chicago and beyond. I'd also like to extend very, very personal thanks to Programming Chair, my friend Patty Sternberg, and Membership Chair, also friend McCole Stewart-Serta, both of you for your efforts with this evening's event. McCole, Patty, thank you so much. Finally, I want to extend, of course, always acknowledgement and thanks to my colleagues, Deputy Director, Chair, and Dittmer Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art, Ann Goldstein, and Associate Curator, Robyn Farrell. I think many of us will know that Ann Goldstein curated Barbara's last major retrospective exhibition, a kind of reference point, jumping off point for our current presentation, and organized that for the Museum of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles, 1999, traveled to the Whitney in 2000. And we also know through the lens of SCA, but through, of course, Ann's practice, Ann is always an exemplary advocate for and partner to artists. Her contributions to this latest iteration of Barbara's work were critical to its success. So thank you, Ann. And Robyn, truly the lead curator of the project, shepherded an enormously complex exhibition to its amazing final realization. The museum has been transformed with text, image, sound, video, but most importantly, the museum's been transformed with ideas. Robyn has expertly collaborated with nearly every team in the museum, and of course, most importantly and trustedly, working closely with Barbara Kruger herself to ensure that curator and artists were aligned with Barbara's vision for the installation every step of the way. So it's a wonderful opportunity to hear from both Ann and Robyn this evening. I'm so grateful. And now, thanks for letting me introduce this program. All of SCA, I'd like to turn the program over to my dear friend and SCA President, David Egland, with thanks to everyone. David, thank you.
Thank you, James, for the introduction, and good evening, everyone. The SCA is very pleased to welcome you to our first member event of the season. This half-hour behind-the-scenes perspective with Associate Curator Robyn Farrell offers compelling insights into this re-envisioned retrospective. After Robyn's remarks, she'll be joined by Ann Goldstein, Deputy Director, and our Membership Chair, McCole Stewart-Serta, for a Q&A session with all of you. Before I turn the camera over to Programming Chair Patty Sternberg, I wanted to mention some of our upcoming SEA programs and events. On October 20th, the SEA will be hosting Edgar Heepa Birds, an artist and advocate for Indigenous communities worldwide, for a virtual talk entitled Spirit Citizen, Provocative Native American Public Art and Studio Practice. Hendrik Folkerts, now curator of International Contemporary Art at Moderna Museet Stockholm, leads a Q&A following the lecture. On November 10th, we welcome Chicago-based interdisciplinary artist Maria Gasper, who is on the faculty of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Maria is also the founder of the 96 Acres Project, which is a series of community-engaged, site-responsive art projects that focus on ideas about social and restorative justice issues, and that examine the impact of incarceration at the Cook County Jail in Chicago. For this stimulating program, Maria will be in conversation with Legacy Russell, Executive Director and Chief Curator of The Kitchen in New York. In addition to tonight, we have 3 more member events this fall. On October 16th, SEA members will visit select venues included in Toward Common Cause exhibition organized by the Smart Museum at the University of Chicago that celebrates the 40th anniversary of the MacArthur Fellows Program. Curator Abigail Winograd will be leading a walkthrough of the exhibition at the Smart Museum. Afterward, we will visit the DuSable Museum Rotunda to view a special Kara Walker installation and conclude at the Logan Center for the Carrie Mae Weems show. We also have a special members collaboration with Sculpture Milwaukee on October 22nd, where Kenny Schachter will give a virtual talk about the current state of contemporary art and how it continues to evolve in relation to the pandemic era of advancing technology, reimagining institutions, and civically engaged social dialogues. Our next member event will be held on November 1st and also focuses on Barbara Kruger with a private in-person viewing of the Kruger exhibition. Much like our Obama Portraits event this past summer, the museum will be open from 7 to 8:30 exclusively for SEA members. This evening offers a unique opportunity to take everything you learned tonight and experience the exhibition without the usual crowds during normal museum hours. Stay tuned for upcoming details on a reception that will take place before. For more information about any of these programs, please visit the SEA website. And before we hear from Patty, I want to thank all of you for being the SEA members. Without your support and engagement, the SEA would not be the vital contemporary art community that we are today. So thank you, and here's Patty.
Thank you, David. It is now my pleasure to introduce Robyn Farrell, as well as Ann Goldstein. Robyn is Associate Curator in the Art Institute of Chicago's Department of Modern and Contemporary Art. Since joining the department in 2013, she has served on the curatorial teams for Kara Walker, Rise Up, Ye Mighty Race, Francis Stark, Intimism, Kamang Wa Lehulier, In All My Wildest Dreams, and Andy Warhol, From A to B and Back Again, and organized projects with Andrea Fraser, Rodney McMillan, Martine Sims, Colleen Smith, Naeem Mohaimen, and Greg Bordowitz. Farrell's research interests includes conceptual art and the moving image, emerging disciplines of media art, artist networks, and the history of exhibition and distribution of film and video. We are also very pleased to welcome Ann Goldstein, who will join for the Q&A following Robyn's presentation. As James mentioned, in 1999, while at MoCA, Ann organized the first major retrospective of the work of Barbara Kruger, which traveled to the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York. Her presence adds tremendous perspective on Barbara Kruger's practice. Ann Goldstein has served as Deputy Director and Chair and Dittmer Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art at the Art Institute of Chicago since 2016. Among her curatorial projects, she organized the just opened exhibition, Nancy Rubin's Our Friend Fluid Metal, on the Bloom Family Terrace, and was the co-creator with Jordan Carter of the recent exhibition, Richard Hunt, Scholars Rock, or Stone of Hope, or Love of Bronze, and organized the Chicago presentation of Andy Warhol from A to B and Back Again, and served as co-curator of the 2018 exhibition Harry Who, 1966 to 1969, and of Pope L's major performance project, The Escape. She is currently organizing the forthcoming solo exhibitions of the work of Josephine Pride and Stanley Brown, the latter with Jordan Carter. Prior to joining the Art Institute, she served as director of the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam for 4 years, from 2010 to 2013, and as senior curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, MoCA, where she worked for 26 years from 1983 to 2009. We are thrilled to have these curatorial experts with us tonight to provide insights into Barbara Kruger's Thinking of You, I Mean Me, I Mean You. Please join me in welcoming Robyn Farrell.
Thank you, Patty and David and James, for your introduction. I echo James's enthusiasm, and thanks to all of the SCA members for joining us tonight and for the generous support of our exhibition with Barbara Kruger, Thinking of You, I Mean Me, I Mean You, which is on view through January 24th, 2022. Tonight, I'm going to give a brief overview of Barbara's practice and her sprawling installations across the museum campus and city. Because the SCA is hosting the on-site member tour of the exhibition November 1st, this will be sort of my focus so that we can talk about some of Barbara's interventions outside the formal exhibition space of Regenstein Hall, providing insight and behind-the-scenes details about this sprawling and extensive exhibition in our city. And after that, Ann Goldstein and Nicole Stewart-Serta will join me for conversation and Q&A with members. One of the most significant artists and visible artists of our time, Barbara Kruger is a curious consumer and a critical observer of the ways in which images circulate through culture. For more than 4 decades, she has combined images with provocative text using direct address to expose and undermine the power dynamics of identity, desire, and consumerism. Kruger's work reflects how we are in our daily lives and holds a continuous presence in the cultural landscape. My work is about how we are to one another, the artist often says, which situates her work as a reflective mirror of the collective belief and doubt, kindness and cruelty, and humor and empathy inherent to the human condition. How we experience images and the way that they shape culture are central concerns in Kruger's practice. Born in Newark, New Jersey in 1945, she attended the School of Art at Syracuse University and the Parsons School of Design in New York before accepting a position at Condé Nast in 1966. Part of the first generation to grow up with television, Kruger also considers her exposure to pop culture a major influence. Both her personal media literacy and her time in art school aided Kruger as a page designer and picture editor at Mademoiselle and House and Garden magazines, where she received firsthand experience in the conception, creation, and circulation of consumer culture, learning strategies that commanded the attention and economy of a page design, which continues to inform her work today. And following this tenure at Condé Nast, Kruger worked as a freelance picture editor and graphic designer for magazines and books and held numerous teaching positions for the following decades, including full-time professorships at the University of California, San Diego, and Los Angeles, where she recently retired this year. The meaning of Kruger's works is always contextual, and that's really an important point because her work is informed by the specific site and moment of presentation, always adapting to and experimenting with new technologies. Although best known for Black and white images superimposed with text, such as the image you see on the left, "We Will Not Become What You Mean to You," in the museum's collection, the artist for over 3 decades has presented her work in 3-dimensional form. This includes large-scale room wraps, installations on building facades, and multi-channel videos, such as what you see here, which is an installation view of her 2010 work, The Globe Shrinks, also in the exhibition. The urgency of Kruger's work as it migrates from printed page to surface to screen, from interior to exterior walls, lies perhaps less in its graphic immediacy than in its cultural fluency and the ways it is continually replayed in the present. Our exhibition, Thinking of You, I Mean Me, I Mean You, is the artist's largest solo exhibition in the United States since 1999. Addressing the breadth of the artist's career, it really focuses on the last 20 years of production. And as James said, it does not approach her practice in any kind of chronological manner. Instead, it confounds a conventional temporal unfolding of what would be a career retrospective by looking at the philosophical and physical institutions that contain and construct our daily lives. With this exhibition, Kruger envisions the retrospective itself by rethinking and remaking and replaying her work for the contemporary moment. In the artist's words, the exhibition attempts to be as open-ended as the everydayness of our lives. And I will talk more about that tonight and look forward for you to seeing it in person. Designed for the cover of our exhibition catalog, Kruger's image, which you see at the far right, features the show's title, but it also serves, in her words, as a logo for the exhibition. But it's also a play on the title of the artist's 1999 retrospective, Thinking of You, which you see an image of all the way to the far left. And in the middle, a November 2010 W magazine cover featuring the artist's signature text superimposed over Kim Kardashian. And the phrase, according to Kruger, is about identity and ego and the fluidity of shifting selves. When seeing these three images together, we get a sense of how Kruger produces new meaning with each iteration of her iconic texts and images. As you've heard tonight, the exhibition was created in very close collaboration with the artist, and it encompasses the full sweep of her career. But it's unprecedented in scale, scope, and methodology. And it's really the most robust exhibition to date. Known for spatializing her practice, the artist was invited to incorporate the museum's architecture into the exhibition design. So the artist has taken over our campus, spanning traditional exhibition spaces such as Regenstein Hall into and beyond galleries to various sites throughout our museum campus and the city. And by engaging the museum in this way, the exhibition is poised to generate dialogues across artistic disciplines and curatorial divisions, prompting new questions about the organization and function of cultural institutions like our own. Included on the following set of slides are views that demonstrate this radical strategy, while also allowing me to provide some technical insight into how we achieved Barbara's incredible vision for the entrance to the exhibition to Regenstein Hall and what will follow beyond. On the left, we see a new LED video situated within the center of the space, and a detail of this work, which is untitled, I Shot Therefore I Am, to the right. This work is one of 5 new LED videos in the exhibition, a series that Kruger calls replays, which animate her well-known iconic work with contemporary wordplay and also reflecting our contemporary moment. The monumental work is surrounded by a reprised wallpaper installation that includes over 600 digital images Kruger sourced from the internet while Googling and searching for herself. The images are not her own, but instead pilfered versions of her signature Futura bold oblique white on red text and image combinations. And so in this space, Kruger's appropriation of her own appropriated styles raises questions about art and authenticity, authorship in the digital age, and the alarming rate of proliferation of visual information we're exposed to every day. Important to this entire installation is the equipment. And throughout the exhibition, overall, it set an incredibly high bar for our time-based media and curatorial teams. The technology selected for the show is the biggest and brightest ever exhibited at the Art Institute. And here I have a collection of images that demonstrate how we achieve such a thing. The LEDs featured in all the replays have a very high lumen output, which means a measure of the total amount of visible light, which is emitted from each pixel relative to their size. Now, while this creates great brightness, it also means they require large, diverse infrastructure because they exhaust a tremendous amount of heat and need precisely constructed supports. This made work quite challenging for us, but as you have seen, if you've been to the show or will see, really creates an impressive standout for the exhibition. And just to describe to you what's on this slide, on the left, you see the armature for the LED constructed out of wood to make the cabinet. And this at this moment, we are awaiting power and data runs. In the middle, you see the LED panels have all been perfectly placed, level and flush with the surrounding wall. And you can even see, if you look below that large black square, there's a little white rectangle, and that's actually the speaker. So if you've been to the show, when you come to the show, you'll hear sound, and it's quite immense sound, and it's actually installed within the wall. So another new technical insight that we worked on for this exhibition. And the final image you see shows a grid of red and blue squares. And this reflects the data connections that were tested before the video went live. So at this point, we had covered everything in plastic to protect it from debris, and it remained this way until we opened the exhibition. And then the next slide just shows two installation views of other LED works. Well, on the left, you have the iShop that I've just broken down for you. But in the other image, you see two other replays of hers, which is entitled Your Body is a Battleground and Admit Nothing, which are included in a space within the Regenstein Hall exhibition galleries. But now I'm going to move away from the Regenstein proper exhibition so that we can explore the spaces throughout the museum. And this space is the Roger McCormick Sculpture Court in the Art of the Americas department. And as you can see, it took quite a lot of collaboration to install this fiberglass statue from 1997. And I think we have at least over 6 people that collaborated both with Barbara, who is not seen in the image, as well as our curatorial team to ensure the safety and perfect placement within the space. This was quite a departure for Barbara's two-dimensional practice. She created this statue along with a group of other works that showed key figures in compromising poses. In doing so, she attempted to address the unexamined constructions of history and the problematic place of public commemorative monuments, still a very important topic today, and questioning, in this case, who was honored and why. The title of this work, Justice, depicts notorious American lawyer Roy Cohn wearing heels and draped in an American flag shaped as a skirt, and kissing former director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. Kruger chose an intimate embrace that stands in contrast to her subject's political personas, in what she described as trying to break down the sanctity around rallying calls for justice and family and dealing with the complex contradictions of public and private lives. Kruger classicized the life-size figures using a bright white finish. In placing justice among the neoclassical works in the gallery, the artist draws a connection between the virtuous expressions of our nation's past and the statue, which of course questions traditional commemorations. Next, we are moving out almost to the entrance of the Rice Building, where Barbara installed untitled risers. On the left, the vinyl is actually laid out on the ground, and the image on the right shows that one half of the stairwell complete. And this installation serves as both a surface, of course, for Barbara's work, but also as a guide that leads the visitor to her main exhibition space in Regenstein Hall. Not visible in these images is a booming sound installation, one of many time-based media audio works that Barbara calls rogue audio, installed throughout the museum. In this space, you hear sort of a consistent trudging of someone up a stairway, which is also how Barbara describes it, filling the auditory space. And as I mentioned, there are also audio works in elevators at both entrances to the museum, both stores, as well as throughout the exhibition. Beyond the Rice Building, we have installations in the galleries of Ancient and Byzantium, as well as Architecture and Design, which you see here. The video in the Ancient and Byzantium galleries features Barbara's 1996 set of videos, public service announcements, in which she created while in residence at the Wexner Art Center at Ohio State University. And it's important to note that these were really, when she produced these, it was a turning point for her at the residency, actually taking on editorial and directing training, and for the very first time. And it really shifted her career in thinking about using screens and moving image in space. And so therefore we're broadcasting this video here, and then we have another one at the Grand Staircase, kind of trying to get that same idea of the direct address, where these works were originally produced for Ohio public service announcements. And the rug on the right is part of the Pass Forward installation in the Architecture and Design Permanent Collection galleries. In the modern wing, Barbara covers the floor of Griffin Court. And here we see an image of that underway. A wall mural as well is in the balcony. And we have monitors throughout which relate to another work inside the exhibition. As you see, sections of vinyl were rolled out and installed and treated over a 36 period of time. So it really was actually quite a quick installation over our 2 closed days, and open to the public almost a week before the exhibition opened. For this installation, Kruger reprised the work Untitled Blind Idealism, adapted from the prose of psychiatrist and political philosopher Frantz Fanon. Modifying Fanon's original Blind Idealism is reactionary. Kruger's additional adjectives address the enduring necessity of responding to one's context, environmental, political, and societal. The artist's sight for this urgent message transfers it from the textual page to physical institutional space. And like many of Kruger's text works, this too has appeared in other public forums. As you can see, in 2016 and 2017, it was part of the Highline Project in New York. The modern wing windows are also covered with Barbara's words. The installation required very special equipment. You can see here a very specific spider lift that had to fit through the doors, but also expand to the full range of the window panes, which cover 6 vertical windows and span 25 feet high by 30 feet wide overall. So quite an incredible distance. Next is an exterior view of the image for the installation on the outside from Monroe. And just to read aloud what the installation says here: first is last, awake is asleep, pro is con, cruel is kind, now is then. On the interior, the windows read, bad is good, up is down, happy is sad, right is wrong, truth is fiction, and anything goes. Also inside the modern wings at the west box is a massive vinyl mural featuring emoji-like faces stacked upon one another. And here you can see the scaffolding and the lifts that were required for this kind of installation that spanned 50 feet high by 34 feet wide. And the next view shows Barbara's full design to give you a sense of the overall view, as well as what the installation looked like after we were complete. Next, Barbara did an installation outside the museum on outside the Alsdorf galleries, the bridge that connects both the buildings over the metro tracks. So that was not only a collaboration with our colleagues that oversee the Alsdorf galleries and objects, but also with Metro, which was, I think, a first, at least for me, in a collaboration at the Art Institute. And the words here read, another hope, another fear, another year. Next, we have installation views of Barbara's work that moves literally out onto the street. The space we call Monroe Wall shows again our wonderful vinyl installers rolling out her images and text. And the next view shows a completed vista of Monroe with an enlarged purple image of an eye all the way over to the left. And then the words that say, love it, shove it, praise it, doubt it, shame it, blame it, believe it, buy it. So within this image, Barbara's recycling images she's used before along with text, but of course it punctuates and really grabs the attention of anyone walking by. Also outside the museum are banners in the full facade of the Michigan Avenue entry. The 3 banners were specifically designed by Barbara for the occasion of the exhibition and feature the title, Thinking of You, I mean me, I mean you. And here you see the full expanse of the other windows on the facade, which read from left to right, promise, property, poverty, profit, pain, power, pleasure. And then from right to left on the other side, denial, deceit, dissent, delight, doubt, disgust, desire. Moving into the city, I've selected a few highlights from Barbara's extensive engagement with our landscape. Here on the left, you see a full installation just off the highway on Lake Street. And then on the right, just down from the museum at Monroe and Wabash and outside Sullivan Center. The next slide shows an installation at the edge of the Uptown and Wrigleyville neighborhoods underneath the Sheridan Red Line L station on the left. And then on the right is a new mural that literally was just completed over the weekend outside Violet Hour. So many of you might actually recognize both of these locations, and hopefully you'll get a chance to snap some selfies in front of them before they come down in January. CTA bus shelters as well as posters on the L platforms are punctuated throughout the city. Here I have just a couple of examples, one in Logan Square, and then of course I love this iconic image of the Chicago Theater with Thinking of You just below it. And finally, Barbara's words grace the cityscape every night with Art on the Mart. And this is a new commission that Barbara produced on the occasion of the collaboration with Art on the Mart and the Art Institute show. And again, it's showing at 7:30 and at 8 o'clock every night until Thanksgiving. And it's part of her long and ongoing series of untitled questions. Next, I have an image of the map that we've included in the visitor guide. And I want to point this out because I think it's really important to be able to locate all of these wonderful installations on the campus. The visitor's guide has a map with green dots that highlight where you can find Barbara's work on campus. And within just a couple weeks, we'll have a larger list of the city installations so that you can find them if you go sort of on a citywide field trip. I also want to point out that from an accessibility standpoint, we were able to have both visual descriptions and audio descriptions available on the website online, and then all single channel works in the exhibition also have sound descriptions available on the labels. So Barbara is an artist of world renown, as we know, but the exhibition presents an opportunity to call attention to her important connections to our city. Barbara often recalls her years in Chicago fondly as a visiting artist to the School of the Art Institute in 1975 and 1979, as well as exhibitions with Rona Hoffman from the mid-1980s to the 1990s. So fittingly, thinking of you, I mean me, I mean you, is the artist encompassing our campus, but also spilling out into the city. So we can think about the immense and significant role that we had and relationship with her over her career. And it's been an absolute honor, of course, to work on such an extraordinary opportunity to collaborate with Barbara. And throughout the process, I have to mention, I've been energized by the incredible efforts of my colleagues. Every single department, as James mentioned, as well as James, my co-curator, and Ann, who have been wonderful guides and stalwart supporters of this exhibition, and whose longstanding commitment to Barbara's work really shines through here. So I just want to do a shout out and thank you to all of you and to everyone at the museum for bringing this incredible show to life, especially at a time when we've all been so separated. It's really sort of a wonderful moment to come together. And I look forward to showing all of you more work on site on November 1st. So now I would like to invite both Ann and Nicole to join me, and we can welcome some questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Robyn. We really appreciate this rich overview of this really iconic, comprehensive, and truly unprecedented exhibition. So thank you so much. And thank you, Ann, for joining us tonight for the Q&A portion of our evening. It's just a pleasure to have you here, and really the opportunity to connect with you all, the curators, and to have this kind of access to your thinking that went into these exhibitions and your histories with the artist. This is one of the great benefits of the Society for Contemporary Art, and we are just delighted to be here with you tonight. So before we jump into the audience questions, I wanted to turn it over to Ann to ask the first question.
Thank you, McCall, and thank you, Robyn, for such a fantastic presentation. And thank you to the SCA for your incredible support. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I'm really delighted to be here. And I wanted to ask the first question to get things started. And Robyn doesn't know what I'm going to ask, but it should hopefully not too hard. And just thinking about what you've been talking about and knowing how hard you've been working on this project for these past years, I know from my experience, when you enter into a project of this kind of immensity and scope, you kind of enter in with one idea of the artist, with one idea of the work. You might come out thinking something else. And I wondered about that and about just how has Barbara's work affected you, and what have you learned, and what does the work mean to you?
Thank you, Ann. That's a super wonderful and layered and important question. And I think first and foremost, I'm actually going to quote a recent wonderful piece of press that the show received earlier this week in the Washington Post. And the title said, Barbara Kruger is right and we should all listen up. And I think that, that's something maybe I knew of before, but I was 100% confident and positive that Barbara is always right. And just, you know, insofar as the observations and commentary and conversations we've had about living in the moments over the last 4 years, which have been, you know, very tough and challenging, with some bright spots, with some low spots. And so I think, you know, her view on life in the world and how we are to one another is so succinct and ever present. And so I don't know so much if anything's changed, but I think I've just kind of come to really to know most of the scope of her work and how thorough I'm familiar with it now, because I think going into it, I had maybe even a quarter, and that's generous of an understanding. Whereas now it's just so much richer. And so I think she's always right about everything. And working with her on an exhibition is, again, just, it's such a wonderful experience, because she's very, very decisive, very specific, and her vision, from what she described to, you know, you and I, Ann and James, in those early days and conversations, the show looks like what she described. And so she has this ability to really push the limits, but so that they're also within the realm of possibility. And I think that that's something that I've been continually, you know, in awe of, and it's what's quite exhilarating. And of course, all that's true because of our incredible team and staff and support and all of that. But I think that's something that's been really quite amazing. So, and I think I've had conversations with lots of folks about this and giving tours over the last week, but something I wrote about in my essay and we've all talked about too is I hope that others are able to see and learn more that the fact that Barbara's work is not just this two-dimensional pairing of images and text, and that her work not only reflects the moving moments of the times in which they're made, but also the technologies in which they were produced. And I think that's a really important thing that I don't know if everyone knows about her work. And I hope that, I think it's very clear through our presentation that's the case. So I hope I've answered everything, but this is a good way to begin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And since I have the floor, I'm actually going to point out something. Ann, I'm so glad you have the wall clock in your office, because I didn't mention that in my presentation. So Ann has a wall clock in her office that's part of a wonderful set of merchandise Barbara designed for the show. So this is, I guess, the advertising plug, but you should all know that there's a clock available. There's t-shirts, hoodies, socks, mugs, a leather clutch that says Money Talks on it, tote bags that say Too Big to Fail. So, you know, all of your fall and winter shopping should happen in the museum store. So be sure to check that out.
That
Oh,
is
how
fantastic
wonderful.
merch.
Look forward to seeing that. Wow. And thank you so much for sharing that, Robyn. And, you know, I want to pick up on one of the things that you mentioned, you know, working with the artist, the opportunity to work with Barbara. And maybe then I can ask you, Ann, because the Art Institute's exhibition is the first solo presentation of Barbara's work since your exhibition in 1999-2000. And I was wondering, can you tell us a bit about your history with Barbara? And are there any insights or anecdotes that you might be willing to share with us?
Thank you. Yeah, I feel so privileged to have had the opportunity to work with her on a number of occasions. And I will say that everything grew out of something else. So I first worked with Barbara in for an exhibition in 1989 at MoCA called A Forest of Signs, which was a group exhibition that I co-curated with Mary Jane Jacob, who was then, who's back in Chicago, but then the chief curator at MoCA. And we looked at the work of 30 American artists who were addressing the impact of the mass media and cultural representations on how we consider ourselves and others, included Barbara's work and artists like Cindy Sherman and Richard Prince and Sherry Levine and Louise Lawler and even Christopher Williams. And so we actually commissioned a work of Barbara's for that exhibition, which was a mural to be painted on the south wall of what was then called the Temporary Contemporary, now the Geffen Contemporary about a 200-foot long wall that was about 3 stories high. And she conceived of a design that incorporated the Pledge of Allegiance and a number of questions like who is bought and sold, who is free to choose, who dies first, who laughs last, etc. Through a very long story, the project was not actually realized until a year after the exhibition closed in 1990. And it evolved in its design to drop the Pledge of Allegiance and just keep the questions, but it retained the design to look like an American flag. And coincidentally, it was actually just, I think a couple of years ago now, repainted on the north wall of the Geffen Contemporary. So that was because of the kind of ongoing process of that, it drew us close. And it became very clear to me that I wanted to propose a retrospective of her work. And so that was realized some years later in 1999, as was said. I had the opportunity also to work with Barbara when I went to the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam and commissioned a work for the first exhibition that I did as director in 2010, acquired that work, and it's actually been installed in a few different forms, and it's actually on view at the Stedelijk in a form outside of the museum's auditorium. And it actually includes the same quote, the same George Orwell quote as in the first gallery of the exhibition here. Imagine, if you want to imagine the future, what is it? Think of a boot stomping on a human face forever. And if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stomping on a human face forever. So it's interesting because even with, you start to see how Barbara, rethinks and reapproaches and re-envisions her own work, that it isn't always just a new creation, but often a rethinking and a replaying as we see in this exhibition. So yeah, it's been a long, wonderful relationship, and I still learn from her, and I agree with you completely that Barbara's work is just always right on. And I think what I learned from it as well is that there can be a tendency to think, and even when we think of her show right now, and we think of Your Body's a Battleground, and we think of what's going on in our country, and we think, oh my God, this exhibition is so relevant to this moment. But when you step back, I think her work is really about, as Robyn said, how we treat each other and human nature, which doesn't really change. And so I think fundamentally her work is always meaningful, and always reaches, I think, beyond who we think it may touch as well. I think a work like Your Body's a Battleground, which was initially thought of in relationship to women's reproductive rights, I think certainly in how she did the replay, when you see the exhibition on the first, you'll see how it goes so far beyond that.
It seems with an artist like Barbara Kruger, there are so many ways you could have gone with this exhibition. And in fact, we have a question in the chat from Jason Pickelman. Jason has asked about the galleries where the exhibition has been installed. And these galleries have been used for such a wide variety of exhibitions, from contemporary to classical. And would you call these galleries versatile or limiting, and why?
Well, I think that if there's any restrictions or limitations, it didn't really bother Barbara, our design. I mean, it should be said that, again, within the galleries, it's all Barbara's vision, straight down to the floor. If you've been to the show, when you visit the show, you'll notice there's this like beautiful gray static flooring. And Barbara found that. She, scoured the internet looking for something that had the right energy for the show. And, for anyone that's visited Regenstein or shown Regenstein, that's sort of the historical wood grain flooring. So some might see that as a restriction, but it didn't even occur to Barbara, because she said, well, I'm going to have my own flooring and it's going to be this, and this way it will kind of bring all the work together. The same is true for lighting. We were able to, acquire new lighting that's very thin linear lighting, so that, again, it doesn't really create a lot of noise up above for the experience. And so I think the design, coupled with these sort of really important choices, were such that allowed us to really transform the galleries, but made a huge impact without, we didn't make any major architectural changes. We worked around the existing space.
And it seems, though, then, like so much of the exhibition is site specific. So how will the show change, or will it, between venues?
The show will look different at every venue because it's site specific. Of course, there are some loaned objects and works that will remain the same from Chicago to Los Angeles, but Griffin Court, the murals, the risers, all of the where Justice is installed here will all be different in Los Angeles. So all of that will look very different, and there will be other site-specific works there that don't exist in Chicago because they're influenced and informed by the site in Los Angeles.
Sounds like it's worth a trip. And
Indeed.
A question here from David Salkin, and David asked if you can speak to the inclusion of the easy paste ups.
The paste up works, yes. So those are installed. It's a series of 20 works that are installed in the exhibition. They almost they line a primary corridor in the space. And for those of you that aren't familiar or don't know, paste up is a phrase that refers to the analog way in which, from what I understand, an industry reference of cutting and pasting, text and images and pairing them. It's sort of a analog treatment that Barbara learned while working at Condé Nast, and so it influenced the way that she formulated her images that stand as works themselves, but it's very important because they're foundational to the way that she sort of has worked always, even though she's blown up works or been more extensive in size. So Anne, I don't know if you want to add to that, but just that there's not a lot of old or early work in the show, but these are very important, and they are specific to Chicago. They are only going to be in the Chicago presentation. So all the more reason it feels extra special to have them as this important touchstone for her practice.
Yeah, as Robyn said, they're really like what we would have called the camera ready art. They're collages. So if you look at them carefully, you'll see that they're literally, pieces of paper that have been composed together. And but what's interesting too is that these are works that she had not shown in the time, and even in the show that we did at MoCA, we had work going back to the 70s, which is included in among some of these, but these were works that she actually made public maybe only about 10 or 15 years ago. And so I think it's actually it's a great insight into a kind of hands-on methodology. And of course, as Robyn said, it goes immediately back to Condé Nast. And you just see how, when you're a picture editor, you have to learn how to make things jump off the page and grab people's attention. And you can see how she was able to do that, and how powerful these are, even at their very small scale.
I've got a question for Robyn from Tony Tassett. And Tony asked Robyn that you described in your essay how Kruger's art is sometimes appropriated by others. And has her radical openness ever been used to promote hate? Has her egalitarianism ever backfired?
Thank you, Tony. I'm glad you brought this up because I didn't speak a lot about the work inside Regenstein. I couldn't really deep dive into describing the work that's the wallpaper that I briefly mentioned that has over 600 images that Barbara found online. So those, it gives you a sense of the fact that I don't even think we fully grasp all the work that's been appropriated of Barbara's. But as far as backfiring, I don't know if I describe it as backfiring, but there is this sort of notorious court case from the early 2010s where, for those of you that may or may not know, the streetwear brand Supreme, their style is 100% borrowed from Barbara Kruger. It's the Futura oblique bold white text on a red box that says Supreme. And that has been their brand always. And Barbara never copyrighted any of her, imagery, because she feels that, it belongs in the public sphere. So they openly adopted her style and made millions and millions of dollars off of it. And then in, I don't know, in the 2000s at some point, a female-owned smaller streetwear brand named Married to the Mob did a play on that. They made a t-shirt that used the Supreme likeness, but was very a cheeky statement that caused a lawsuit, and Supreme ended up suing them. But then, of course, they said, well, we didn't steal it from you. We stole it from Barbara Kruger, like you stole it from Barbara Kruger. And so it was this whole back and forth about, who owned what. And I can paraphrase, but Barbara had this wonderful quote that she'd been interviewed about.
Do you want me to read? I found
Go
it.
ahead.
Do you want me to read it?
Yes.
Okay. Because it's a great.
Yes.
Another
It's
thing
so
to say
good.
is Barbara's command of language and her writing is so amazing. So what she said about all this is, what a ridiculous clusterfuck of totally uncool jokers. I make my work about this kind of sadly foolish farce. I'm waiting for all of them to sue me for copyright infringement.
Too much.
So,
And-
Tony, I don't know if that's a backfire. I actually think it's quite great. But it is an example of the fact that she didn't obviously police Supreme, but others then went ahead and tried to police each other. And that's a lot about what this introductory wallpaper is. I saw a question from Michelle Holland that relates to this, so I'm just going to mention it because it's about appropriation and is it international? And so all those Googled images or Reddit and Instagram, all of that, I think it's all international. I think that how her style has influenced and informed and proliferated generations, I think can't be measured, but the entrance to the exhibition attempts to sort of be a comment on that.
And does she do it on purpose, right? Is it also intentional? Do you think she actually is trying to draw out this kind of cross appropriation?
I don't think she has to draw it out. It's just there. It exists, and it's just, it's ever present. And so in doing this particular work, which is titled That's the Way We Do It, I think she's just drawing attention to it. I don't think she has to do anything more than that.
And we only have a few more minutes before we close up. So I wanted to ask you all about the catalog. And if you could speak a little bit more about it, its content, the collaboration with Barbara, your partnership with LACMA, et cetera.
The catalog. I think I have it here on my bookshelf, if I can reach it. Yeah. This is a catalog, beautifully designed with Barbara, and again a collaboration with our colleagues at LACMA. But the book is multi-layered, and of course the book itself has a timestamp and a marker because we went to press in October 2020 when we didn't know what the outcome of the election would be. We didn't know where things with the pandemic were going to go. We didn't even know when the date of our show was going to be at this point. So it's a very interesting object. It's a beautiful object in of itself, and it also includes quite a lot of scholarly research and essays by all the curators, and then also a lovely section of printing of writing that Barbara has followed throughout her career. So not writing about her work, but writing that she has really spent a lot of time thinking about. So it's almost like a secondary syllabus that's within the book. But I think it's important and brilliant that there was this decision to call out that when we went to press, there was this uncertainty that everybody was feeling. So I think we all feel very proud about it. And I don't know if you want to add anything Anne actually, some of photos that she took from, there's a lot of images in the very beginning from 2020. So including some protest images with Barbara's work in the background in Los Angeles, which I think Anne actually shot with your camera. So you're a contributing photographer in the book.
No, I think
but again, yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I would just say it's an incredible publication, and it's very Barbara in that it also, in that idea of including text by others that aren't about her work. I think the thing she hates the most is probably what we're doing right now, is people kind of talking about her, and I think she really wants the work to be out there and for people to directly engage it, and not to really be the center of attention as well.
I've got one final question for you all from Parker Thomas, and Parker asked about Barbara's messages, which implicitly and often explicitly call out the mistreatment and need for justice for women and people of color. And in the exhibition, Parker noted a lot of feminist messages that depicted in the stated works, but didn't recall many specific examples focusing on racial or other kinds of equality. And can you point some of those out, or is the artist specifically focusing on a white feminist message as a way of showing how other people are missing in history?
I'm reading the same. I'm reading Parker Thomas's question too, just to kind of catch. I think there's one example in this question about an installation in the show called Picturing Greatness, which included Barbara going through our Art Institute photography collection and selecting portraits of artists. And that was sort of the conceptual underpinning of that work, of looking at what we have in our holdings and selecting portraits of artists, which are a majority of white men, which is a part of the essay that she writes of, what is greatness, questioning what greatness looks like. And that there are incremental changes underway in collecting and institutions, including women and artists of color, because there are a few images in our collection that feature those artists. And so I just want to point out that the images of our artists of color and women are the only ones we have in the collection. So those weren't, parsed out. Those were the only ones that we have in the collection, and the majority are white male artists, which she talks about in this essay that's installed within that space. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. And I don't know if you want to address any of the overall messages.
Yeah, I think as I said earlier, I think that how she is re-envisioning something like Your Body's a Battleground goes beyond maybe the initial kind of feminist thrust of it, but I also think that she very self-consciously speaks through her own skin, and I think doesn't want to appropriate other people in that way. I think that Barbara has also used existing images in her work. She's always had a very, except for say in some of her videos where she's made new images, and it is a kind of broader spectrum of people that are in her videos than in her vinyl works, for example. But I think that she's always had a great distrust of using a camera. She's always felt that that's an incredible aggression to point a camera at another human being. And I would also point out to the public service announcements that Robyn mentioned at the beginning that are in our Ancient and Byzantium galleries, which are really powerful messages about age, race, violence, and gender. So it's there. And but I do think she's conscious about herself as a white person and how she speaks through her own skin.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Robyn, for this really rich discussion and for the great presentation tonight, which has opened up the exhibition to us in so many new ways. As I I said, getting to talk with you all is, one of the things that really brought me to the Society for Contemporary Art, and the other is all of you, our members. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight for this virtual presentation and discussion, for your great questions, for being members, and we look forward to seeing you at some of the upcoming events. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.